The first thing you asked about was the healthiest diets. And you wrote carnivore, paleo, vegetarian, and vegan. You missed one, and you probably missed a lot of them, but there's one that really stands out to me. Are those the four that you want to talk about?
Well, no, those are just examples of what I would like to talk about.
Diets to talk about. There's so many different ways to eat. Most important thing to understand about diets is we are human beings. Well, two most important things. Human beings are omnivores. That is, we're designed to eat everything. There's certain animals that eat just fruit. There's certain animals that eat just grass. There's certain animals that eat just meat. We are designed to eat everything. And that's because growing up on the African savanna, there wasn't a lot of food. So our ancestors who survived to have us as descendants were the ancestors who figured out how to extract energy, which is ultimately what eating is all about, to extract energy from multiple food sources, from all different ways of getting food. And so we're said to be omnivores, omni meaning everything, vor meaning eating, as opposed to carnivores who eat meat, frugivores who eat fruit. Where's other ones here? Herbivores, which eat plants. And believe it or not, there are actually insectivores that only eat insects. So there are various ways that the animal world eats. We are supposed to eat everything. Now, in terms of diets, that's the first point I want to make about diets. But in terms of the various diets, the most important diet is the eat less diet. In other words, eating as little as possible. Eating represents work, biochemical work. Eating costs nutritional resources. Now, theoretically, the foods you eat are supposed to replace those nutritional resources, and you're supposed to get more nutrition from your food than the nutrients expended in processing that food. Those days are gone. Most of the foods we eat today cost us nutrition, and this is one of the hidden prices we pay for the amount of food that we're eating and the overeating that we do. So the most important kind of diet is the eat less diet, eating as little food as possible. And that being said, it's very difficult to do. Why? Because we don't eat for food, or we don't eat for nutrition. We eat for satisfaction. In fact, only human beings, and maybe some domesticated animals like cats and dogs, eat when they're not hungry. Eat when it's not necessary to have food. And one of the most important reasons for this, well, it's a couple reasons, but one of the most important reasons for this is because eating activates the relaxation nervous system. You got two nervous systems. We talked about this before. You got the stress nervous system and you got the relaxation nervous system. The stress nervous system is the nervous system that raises your blood pressure and lowers your immunity and causes your bones to deteriorate and makes you get wrinkles and causes heart disease and really all the miseries of life, constipation and infertility and fight or flight, anxiety, insomnia, hot flashes. If you want to know what activated sympathetic nervous system feels like, ask a menopausal woman. And all of the signs of menopause that women know to hate are really signs of an activated emergency nervous system. It's a very important clue for women who are going through menopausal symptoms. The other nervous system is your relaxation nervous system. It's your calming nervous system. It's the nervous system that's associated with digestion. It's a nervous system associated with sleep. It's a nervous system associated with fertility and libido and creativity. It's a nervous system that's associated with a strong, healthy heart and a strong immune system and beautiful, glowing, wrinkle-free skin and strong bones and strong muscles. Where do you think you want to spend most of your time? Obviously, in the relaxation nervous system called the parasympathetic nervous system. We are designed, when we're under stress, when we're under activation of the sympathetic nervous system, to do anything we could do to get out of that kind of sensation, because it doesn't feel good. From a biological perspective, or an evolutionary biological perspective, we're only supposed to be in sympathetic activation quickly. And then most of the time she's spent in relaxation, the relaxation nervous system, relaxation nervous system activation, the parasympathetic nervous system should be activated most of the time. However, we have created a culture where we have fake emergencies. In fact, many of us are living with fake or false or faux emergencies from the time we wake up in the morning to the time we go to bed at night. And these fake or faux emergencies do not feel good. Ask a menopausal woman what a fake, false or faux emergency feels like. It feels awful. And we'll do anything we could do to get out of that fake, false emergency state. But we don't know what's happening. So we don't consciously get out of that fake state. but we do things unconsciously that will get us out of that fake state. One of the things we do unconsciously to get out of that fake state is we'll drink alcohol. We don't realize we're drinking alcohol because we're constantly in the sympathetic activation state, and the alcohol relaxes the body temporarily. Drugs do the same thing. But probably the most important way we get out of a sympathetic nervous system state, this unpleasant anxiety, insomnia, high blood pressure, low immunity, all the crappy things, all the terrible things associated with this hyperactive sympathetic nervous system state. The easiest, most unconscious, most socially accepted way that we get out of that sympathetic nervous system state is we eat. That's what overeating is about. Overeating is about getting out of this stressed nervous system state. I have a friend who has insomnia. She can't sleep. And when she can't sleep in the middle of the night, she'll go up to the kitchen and she'll get some food and she'll fall asleep. You may notice that you feel tired after you eat food. That's activation of the parasympathetic nervous system. We stress eat when we're under stress. People eat when they're depressed. And the problem with this activation of the parasympathetic nervous system, or eating to get activation of the parasympathetic nervous system, is because we have so much stress, we eat way more than we need to eat. And of all the foods that we eat way more than we need to, most of those choices are what we call hyper palatable choices. Though in science, that means just super delicious choices. And as it turns out, the most super delicious choices are choices that have sugar, fat, and salt. And if you want to make $1 million and you don't have a conscience, you don't care about ethics, figure out a food that has a combination of salt and sugar and fat, and open up a store on the local corner, or have a little kiosk on the local corner and sell that food that has a combination of sugar, salt, and fat. They'll be lining up around the block to get that food, because we can't get enough of that sugar, salt, and fat, that hyper palatable food, because of biochemical changes that occur after we eat that food that relax us, that get us out of that sympathetic nervous system state. So the best diet is going to be a diet that takes into account eating for emotional reasons or eating for mental reasons rather than eating for strictly nutritional reasons. I lost 50 pounds a few years ago, and I did it by just paying attention to when I was really hungry. And I noticed most of the time that I wanted to eat, I wasn't even hungry. There's the food that we want, there's the eating that we eat because we have to, and there's the eating that we eat because we want to. And if you're looking at the menu at the store or at the restaurant, or you're looking at the menu board at the sandwich shop and you're looking at it and you're saying, oh, I'm not sure what I really want to eat. No, I don't want any. I had that yesterday, or I'm tired. You're not hungry. If you're hungry, you're not going to be making those kinds of thoughts aren't going to be going through your head if you're hungry. And I'm not saying, it's very important when you talk about food with somebody, and when I talk about food with you guys, or when you talk about food with your customers, your clients, your friends, your family, that you don't do food shaming, because we're very sensitive about food, because we all intuitively know that we're not doing it right, especially if we have obesity issues or blood sugar issues or digestive health issues, skin issues. If we have any health issues that are associated with how we eat, we know. We don't need somebody to tell us. So you got to be really, really careful about doing fat shaming, food shaming, eating behavior shaming. I can't believe you're going to eat that. You know, that kind of thing. You got to be really careful about that, because most people know. That being said, there are kind and gentle ways to do it. And the most important thing is to have people understand the relationship between the cost of eating and the relationship between eating and their health challenges, number one, and the eating behavior that they're doing unconsciously and unnecessarily. Other than that, you got to be really, really careful when it comes to food, talking to people about food. That being said, we're going to talk about diets. So the most important diet is the low food diet. I didn't say low calorie diet, it's a low food diet. And there's a whole nother reason for that comes to calories that we can talk about on our next Zoom meeting. We talk about sugar. So let's talk about the different kinds of diets. The first one that comes to mind, I'm just going to go by the ones that I think of, and Rebecca or anybody else out there, if you think of one that I didn't mention, I'm happy to address it. The most common one I hear about these days is the carnivore diet. The carnivore diet is an all animal food diet. So the carnivore diet, when people get on the carnivore diet, a lot of times they'll notice they lose weight and they get all excited, or they notice a lot of their health problems are reduced, and they get all excited and they assume that the carnivore diet is the reason for their improved health. And in a way it is, but it's more like when you're on the carnivore diet, you're not eating foods that are causing problems. So it's not so much the foods you are eating on the carnivore diet that gives it its benefits. It's the foods that you're not eating on the carnivore diet that gives it its benefits. That being said, meat is definitely a valuable food. However, that's theoretical. When everybody tells you about how the promoters of the carnivore diet tell you about how human beings are meat eaters, we grew up eating meat, meat is very valuable food, they're only partially right, because the meat they're talking about when they talk about how we're supposed to be eating meat as animals, as human animals, we're supposed to be eating meat, our brains grew from eating meat, and meat was a very important part of the diet in the African savannah as we were growing up from an evolutionary standpoint, even from a Neanderthal prehistorical standpoint, we grew up eating meat, all that's true. But what they're missing is that was a different kind of meat than we eat today. Back then, when you were eating meat, you were hunting it. And that meat was grass-fed. And that meat wasn't getting hormones and wasn't getting antibiotics and didn't have all the fear chemicals that are associated with modern factory farming of meat. I don't know if anybody ever seen factory farming of chickens or factory farming of cows. It's horrific. The meat that we ate from a prehistoric or an evolutionary standpoint wasn't that kind of meat. What's more, when you hunted meat, it was very, very hard work. You were expending calories and it wasn't readily available. So you weren't eating lots of meat. And when you were eating the meat, you were eating the whole meat. You weren't just eating the muscle meat, you were eating the organ meat. So you're eating the whole animal. Today, nobody has to hunt a Big Mac. Nobody's stalking a quarter pounder with cheese. No, the way we eat meat is completely different. The meat that we get at the supermarket is not the same meat that our caveman and prehistoric and African savanna ancestors were eating. So the carnivore diet promoters completely gloss over that fact, that the meat and the dairy and the fish that we eat today is of a completely different nature than the meat and the fish and the dairy that we ate from an evolutionary perspective. That's point number one, and that's a major flaw in the carnivore diet. Another major flaw in the carnivore diet is there are certain nutrients that are not found in meat that you need to have. One in particular is fiber. Fiber is only found in plant foods. It's not found in animal foods. And the need for fiber is not only important from a mechanical point of view. In other words, fiber's got mechanical benefits. It helps sweep out toxins from the body, sweep out excess estrogens from the body. It also helps to slow down the release of nutrients so they can be absorbed more slowly. It has multiple mechanical benefits, but it also has biochemical benefits. So fiber gets digested by bacteria in the colon to produce a whole slew of wonderful molecules that are important for mood, for sleep, for immune health, for digestive health and intestinal health. And you're not going to be getting those if you're not eating fiber. Fiber acts as a prebiotic to support the health of probiotics, bacteria in the intestine, so they can produce, probiotics, as intestinal bacteria, so they can produce postbiotics. You're not going to get any postbiotics. You're not going to be supporting your probiotics, and you're not going to get any prebiotics if you're on a carnivore diet. Number three, there are vitamins, specifically vitamin C, that you're not going to get from a carnivore diet, because vitamin C is only found, with some rare exceptions, is only found in vegetable foods and plant foods. There's small amounts of vitamin C perhaps in eggs, and there may be some vitamin C in some of the organs if you're eating organ meat, but you're not going to get significant quantities if you're on the carnivore diet. And then fourth of all, there's a class of nutrients that we've only really recognized them as nutrients for maybe the last 60 or 70 years, because they're only used in the body in very, very tiny concentrations that are only found in foods in very, very, very tiny concentrations. And these are substances called phytonutrients. Phytonutrients are plant nutrients that function as adaptogens. And these plant nutrient adaptogens help like the name sounds, they help our body and specifically our cells adapt to things. They're stress management molecules. And if you're on the carnivore diet, you might be getting a little bit of them, but you're certainly not going to get the mother load of them, which is plant material, hence the term phytonutrients. It's true that animals eat the plants, they'll have some phytonutrients in them, but they're not going to have the super high concentrations of phytonutrients. You'll miss the super high concentrations of phytonutrients, you'll miss the vitamin C, you'll miss the fiber, and you'll find yourself ingesting a lot of toxic food in terms of hormones, in terms of antibiotics, in terms of fear and death chemicals that are produced by animals, and also in terms of the different balances in the biochemicals of the body based on the foods that we feed our food animals. Our livestock, our food animals don't eat the same diets that, and even our fish don't eat the same diets that their wild cousins eat. Our farm animals and our farm fish even eat grains, and that throws off their biochemistry. So we're eating a different biochemical spectrum of substances when we eat a farmed animal, whether it's a farmed fish or a farmed cow or farmed livestock, or even if it's dairy. So there's a whole slew of problems associated with the carnivore diet, although there are, because you're not, as I said earlier, because you're not getting a lot of the problematic ingredients that are found in non-carnivore foods, and there are a ton of those, a lot of people notice that they feel better and they lose weight when they're on the carnivore diet. And so for some people, when they start, if they've been on a lousy diet for a long time, when they start the carnivore diet, they'll get some benefits, and that's a good thing. But in the long term, it's probably not a great way to eat. Then there's the vegetarian diet, and we'll say the vegan diet, because that's like an extreme form of vegetarian. Most of you guys know this, but a vegan is somebody who doesn't eat any eggs or honey or anything that's not necessarily meat or dairy or fish. And there's pescatarians also, by the way, who will eat just fish. But let's just go vegan. And those are people that don't do anything that's remotely associated with an animal. And I can kind of relate to that because I don't like eating Bambi either. And I don't want to see the fish's head or the shrimp's head when I'm eating it. You know, I don't want to know that I'm eating a living animal. And that's just, it's not really, doesn't feel right to eat living animals. So I understand their perspective. And also, you don't want to be eating a lot of animal protein or animal meat, because eating a lot of animal protein, animal meat is the hardest food to digest. It's the hardest food to process. And it creates the most dramatic and profound changes in the biochemistry of the intestine. So you don't really want to be eating a lot of meat. And so I can understand vegans' perspective. That being said, there's a lot of nutrients that are found in animal foods that are not found in plant foods, just like the other way around. Just like there's a lot of there's some, not a lot, but there's some nutrients, key nutrients that are not found in vegetables that are found in meat. The other way around is they're both true. So you need them both. The nutrients that are not found in vegetarian foods that vegans are going to miss out on are an amino acid called taurine, Taurine. Taurine is a very important building protein. There are two very important vitamins. I'm sorry, not a building protein. It's a very important electrical amino acid, not protein. It's a very important electrical amino acid. Taurine's important for eye health. Taurine's important for heart health. In fact, you may have seen taurine in Red Bull, and it's put in Red Bull so they can put lots of caffeine in Red Bulls without taxing out your heart. Taurine has heart cardioprotective benefits. And taurine's also important for skin and skin moisturization. If you have a cat, by the way, and you're not feeding your cat meat, cats have a problem with taurine. You might want to supplement your vegetarian or vegan cat with a little bit of taurine because taurine is only found in animal foods. Same with vegetarians and vegans, they may want to supplement with some taurine, but taurine is not going to be found in a vegan diet. You're also not going to find high concentration of what are called branched chain amino acids unless you're eating beans, which are a vegan's favorite choice, because beans contain high protein. Beans are almost like a fake type of meat. And in fact, a lot of fake meats are made with beans. A lot of vegetarian fake meats are made with beans as the base, because beans contain a protein profile and an amino acid profile that's close to meat. But the concentration of amino acids, of building amino acids in meat, is much denser in carnivore foods and meat foods than they are in beans and vegetarian type foods. Also, beans, which are the main building protein of a vegan diet, are a very high source of problematic molecules, which I'll talk about in a second, that plants make, especially beans and seeds and grains make, and nuts make, that are very hard on the body. I'll talk about that here in a second. And if you're getting your protein from beans, if you're on a vegan diet or vegetarian diet, you're getting your protein from beans, you may run a risk of increased amounts of these components. They're called lectins, L-E-C-T-I-N-S. I'll talk about those in a second. And then also, if you're on a vegan diet or vegetarian diet, you're going to be missing two very important hormones that act like vitamins that act like hormones. We call them vitamins, but really they're hormones, and that's vitamin A and vitamin D. Both vitamin A and vitamin D are only found in animal foods, with some slight exceptions. There is a form of vitamin A called beta carotene, which is not exactly vitamin A, but for some people, not everybody, but some people can convert that vitamin A into beta carotene into vitamin A. But it's kind of a chance you're taking, because not everybody can do that. And then there's vitamin D, which comes from the sun, and that's really the best way to get our vitamin D. But there's no vitamin D contained in vegan or vegetarian foods, with one exception. And this is a very important exception for vegans. There's a type of food that is a cross between an animal and a vegetable. Rebecca knows. It's a cross between an animal and a vegetable, and that is a mushroom, or a fungus, really. Mushrooms are the fruiting bodies of fungus, they're the fruit of a fungus. And mushrooms are an ideal choice for a vegan to be able to get nutrients that are only found in animal foods, because there is vitamin D, and there is vitamin A, and there is fiber, and a lot of the foods, a lot of the nutrients that you can't get in, and polysaccharides also, a lot of the foods that you can't get in one diet. If you're on the carnivore diet, you can't get that you're missing from vegetables, or if you're in the vegan diet, that you're going to miss from meats. You can kind of combine those and get some of them by using mushrooms. And again, mushrooms are also used like fake meat, the same way beans are. Now, I touched on this a little bit, but this is really important, and this is something that we're starting to know more. We're starting to respect more and more in the mainstream, although medicine and certainly in pharmacy school, we learned about these molecules that are found in plants that are plant defensive molecules. And these are molecules that are like chemical weaponry for the plant. Plants, like any other living thing, don't want to be eaten. Animals don't want to be eaten, of course. We don't want to be eaten. Nothing that's alive wants to be eaten, and that includes the plant world. So plants have created a chemical defense system to punish the eaters, or the would-be eaters, of the plants. And they call them chemical defense molecules, or lectins, L-E-C-T-I-N-S. And there are certain foods that are very high in lectins. And these lectin-containing foods can wreak havoc on the immune system. In fact, there are many autoimmune diseases and autoimmune symptoms that are caused by these lectins. The most classic example of a lectin is one we talk about in longevity all the time. Dr. Wallach doesn't go probably half an hour in a talk without mentioning this prime lectin, and that's, of course, gluten. And gluten is a classic example of a plant defensive molecule that the plant, the grain, makes that will punish the eater of the grain. Grains are a type of seed, and seeds are nature's bounty. Grains and seeds and nuts and beans all represent a potential life in their native form. You take a bean, or you take a seed, you put water on it, you put it in dirt, hit it with a little sun, boom, you get life. So the seed is all of life, and that seed is highly protected. So nature has packed lectins into the seeds. It is especially protective of its seeds, which means seeds contain the highest concentrations of lectins of any foods. The highest concentrations also of anti-nutrients, that's chemicals or molecules that attract or trap nutrients. One of those is called phytic acid, or phytates. You probably heard of that. That's another molecule that's found in seeds that acts as an anti-nutrient or protective mechanism. So lectins in beans, nuts, seeds, and grains are very, very problematic. It's not just gluten. Don't ever say, oh, I'm eating gluten-free, but I still have arthritis, because it's not just gluten. It's almost like nobody knew about gluten until 20 years ago. I mean, pharmacy school, and we knew about it, and doctors knew about it. But in the mainstream, nobody knew about it. And then all of a sudden, now everybody knows about gluten. So everybody's focusing on gluten. But it's like we're going from one extreme to another. Gluten is definitely a problem, but there are a lot of other molecules, lectins, plant defensive molecules that are found in vegan foods and vegetarian foods. And I'm in the skin business, as some of you guys know, and I can't tell you the amount of times I see people who have terrible skin problems, acne, that are classic lectin issues, and lectins wreak havoc specifically on the skin. And I look at them and I say, I can tell it's a food problem. And they say, oh no, I'm a vegan. Oh no, I just eat vegetables. And they don't realize that being a vegan, because the idea, the sort of implicit idea in veganism is that's the best way to eat. And if you're eating meat, you're a savage. And if you're eating vegan, you're a highly evolved person. And vegan foods are friendly and kind and natural, and there's no problems with them. There's this kind of intuitive sense that we have about that. That's wrong. There are problematic molecules in veganism that can cause all kinds of problems, all kinds of issues with joints, with the immune system, with autoimmune diseases, and especially on the skin. And if you ever see somebody who has acne, that's the most dramatic one. Eczema, psoriasis, they can all be caused by these lectins, but acne is the most dramatic one across the middle of the face, cheeks here, and all the way around here. That's a classic sign of a food condition. And something as simple as removing beans from the diet or grains from the diet can completely clear up the skin because of those lectins. So veganism, carnivores don't have this problem. Carnivores think other people who aren't eating, people who do the carnivore diet think who aren't eating the carnivore diet or aren't enjoying the carnivore diet are somehow missing the boat. But vegans think people who aren't doing the vegan diet are cavemen or savages. And there's a lot of self-righteousness in the vegan world and in the kind of like holier than thouism in the vegan world. Not everybody, of course, but there is some of that. And vegans should recognize that plants are not kind and gentle and benign either. There's a lot of problems associated with plant-based diets and plant foods. I should throw this out real quick. I said mushrooms are a cross between animal and vegetable. There's another food source that's not quite that way, but still has a lot of the building molecules and a lot of the nutrients that are found only in vegetables, but isn't a vegetable, and that's algae. And algae and seaweed is a complex form of algae, are also a really powerful food that vegans especially should be taking advantage of. And then, what was the other diet? Carnivore, vegan. There was another one.
Keto.
Oh, keto. But
there is a question about the carnivore diet, pharmacist Ben.
Last. Let me see here.
The question about the carnivore diet is how
Paleo.
For those that are diabetic. I know too much protein converts to sugar.
Very, very good. Not a lot of people recognize that, and that is an issue. Protein will get converted very readily into sugar. The body is super well equipped to turn protein into sugar. And this is a problem with a lot of people. When they start eating a lot of protein, they don't lose weight, and they can't figure out why they're not losing weight, and they're missing the point. They're missing the biochemical point that protein gets converted into sugar, which ultimately will get converted into fat. So yes, diabetics have to be a little bit careful of the carnivore diet. But I want to talk about the paleo diet because that's kind of like the carnivore diet. But the paleo diet is not just animal protein. The paleo diet adds in vegetables. It's basically a paleo. The carnivore diet is basically the paleo diet without a lot of vegetables. Paleo includes fruits and includes vegetables, and they emphasize fat a lot in paleo. Paleo's got kind of out of style. Paleo was really big in the 90s. A guy named Dr. Robert Atkins. I'm sure some of you know who Dr. Robert Atkins is. I got to meet Dr. Robert Atkins back in the 90s, and I got to spend some time with him. And I got really interested in paleo. And his point was, much like with the carnivore diet, how it's not so much what you're getting from the carnivore diet as what you're not getting from the carnivore diet that gives it a lot of its benefits. Paleo is the same way. And back in the 90s, people didn't really understand about the problematic nature of carbohydrates. And the paleo diet is really a low carbohydrate, high fat, high protein diet. And this was the brainchild of Dr. Robert Atkins. And Dr. Robert Atkins was practicing in New York City in the 70s, in the 60s, and the 70s. and the 80s, and he was sort of a renegade because nobody's really talking about sugar back then and carbohydrates. But he noticed that when he took his patients off of high carbohydrates, especially sugar, their health would improve dramatically, especially their skin. I got to talk to him quite a bit about improving skin using the paleo diet, and I kind of got into the paleo diet. But what Dr. Robert Atkins and the paleo people miss is the most important point about the keto diet or about any diet in general. And so that's where we come into the ketogenic diet. Paleo diet is like the carnivore diet with fruits and vegetables, or with mostly vegetables with small amounts of fruits and no sugar. I might add at this point that Dr. Atkins, who was the promoter of the paleo diet, the promoter of the high fat, high protein, low carbohydrate diet, weighed about 300 pounds and he looked like a side of beef, just as an aside. So whether or not the paleo diet, the paleo diet, as it turned out, is not the best diet, but it did give people a lot of benefits because it got them off the sugar. And that is a real problem. And we'll talk about that at the end here today. And then definitely we'll talk about that in our next Zoom meeting, because sugar is really the bad guy in this story. So back to the keto diet, which I think is the perfect way to eat. It is the perfect way to eat. I'll tell you why. First of all, well, let's talk about the keto diet, what the ketogenic diet is. The ketogenic diet is a high fat, low carb, moderate, whatever that means, I'll talk about that here in a sec, protein diet. But, and there's a big but here, it's a high percentage fat diet, high percentage or low percentage carb diet, moderate percentage protein diet. What does that mean? It means the percentage of your calories has to be, there's a high percentage of fat from your calories. There's a high percentage or a moderate percentage of protein from your calories, and there's a low percentage of carbohydrate from your calories. Why is that percentage important? Because the percentage means it's a portion of a certain amount of calories. If you don't put the percentage in, it's not a proportion of calories, it's a total amount of calories. And that's where people go wrong in the ketogenic diet. High fat, oh yeah, I can eat lots of fat. I can have French fries, I can have French toast, I can have potato chips, I can have whatever, pizza, cheese, dairy, all the ways we get fat in our diet. But if it's a percentage, it doesn't mean you can have a lot of it. It means your percentage is high. So the key to the ketogenic diet is the total calories have to be about 1,200 calories. And the percentage of fat should be about 80 to 90%. So 80 to 90% of 1,200 is 960, is around 1,000 calories. That means you get 1,000 calories of fat. It doesn't mean you have a lot of fat in your diet. Do you guys see that? It's the percentage. You can't just keep eating fat because you'll eat too many calories. You got to keep your calories down, and that's the key to the ketogenic diet. It's the high fat percentage, low fat percentage, low total calorie diet. Most Americans, I think the average American is about 2,000 to 2,500 calories a day. And a lot of Americans are getting 3,000 or 4,000 calories a day. It's the low calorie intake that is important. Again, the less food you put in your body, the less work your body has to do, meaning the less nutritional resources it's going to be expending. And it really gets down to, do you want to expend your precious protein and your precious vitamins and your precious essential fatty acids on digesting your food? Or do you want to expend it on building muscle and on having a strong immune system and having great bones? If your digestive system is always working, it's always in action, you're always burning through nutrients. And if you're not replacing them with nutritional supplementation with a good diet, you're running at a negative a negative nutrition deficit. So the ketogenic diet allows you to spare nutritional resources by eating less food. Ketogenic diet also lowers the biochemistry, specifically the insulin that's associated with high levels, with ingestion of a lot of calories, especially ingestion of carbs. And insulin is a major health problem. I'm going to give you a little prediction here. In the future, and by future I mean in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, you're going to start to hear about something called mTOR. Have you heard of that, Rebecca? mTOR? M, little m, capital T, capital O, capital R, mTOR. And mTOR is a biochemical in the body, biochemical complex in the body that is associated with revving things up, with speeding things up, speeding up your metabolism. The body wants to be calm. It wants to be cool. It lives longer, and its parts don't wear out as fast when it's not moving so fast, metabolically speaking. That's why animals that have lower metabolisms live a lot longer than animals that have faster metabolism. An elephant can live 80 years or 70 years, has a really, really slow metabolism. A mouse lives 2 months. It has a really, really fast metabolism. A fruit fly lives 2 days. It has a super, super, super fast metabolism. Slowing down the metabolism and giving the metabolism more power, I'll tell you how you do that in a sec, is how you live a long life. What the ketogenic diet does is it reduces the speed of the body, the metabolism of the body, by reducing the action of mTOR. mTOR is sped up by sugar and insulin. The problem, one of the biggest problems with sugar and insulin is the hormone that controls sugar, is it tells the body it's time to grow. It tells cells it's time to divide. It tells the metabolism it's time to move. Insulin, sugar, via this molecule mTOR, speed everything up. What the ketogenic diet does is it calms everything down. Number one, it calms it down by reducing caloric intake, especially calories that are coming in from sugar, from carbohydrates. So it has a lowering effect on mTOR and on insulin. And then number two, the ketogenic diet, when it's done correctly, supplies the body with a more powerful form of energy. Sugar is a form of energy, but it's not a really powerful form of energy. The ketogenic diet supplies the body with a super powerful form of energy that's produced when the body burns fat. This powerful form of energy, it's like a nuclear bomb of energy, is called a ketone. Thus the term ketogenic diet. When you eat the ketogenic way, your body can't get energy from carbohydrates because you don't have a lot of carbohydrates. Your body has to get energy from fat, and it has to get energy from the fat you're burning inside your body. And we'll talk about that here in just a sec. So fat, eventually, when it's broken down, will produce ketones, which function as nuclear bombs of energy that are especially important for the brain and for the heart, and also for the immune system. So folks who have Alzheimer's disease, folks who have dementia, folks who are having memory problems, folks who have heart disease, people who have cancer, people who have immune problems, autoimmune disease, all these people benefit tremendously, tremendously from the ketogenic diet. And in fact, all of us would benefit from the ketogenic diet. I consider it the ideal way to eat. There are doctors and medical professionals who don't really know about the ketogenic diet, and also sometimes some lay people who don't really know about the ketogenic diet's main point, which I just told you. And they'll say, oh, ketogenic diet, that's for diabetics, get that, and they have to go to the hospital. They mix up a condition called ketoacidosis with ketogenesis. Ketoacidosis is a disease state where the body is burning fat like crazy because there's so much fat present either in the body or in foods. The ketogenic diet, remember, is a low-calorie diet. You're not going to go into ketoacidosis if you do the ketogenic diet correctly. If you keep the fats down, you're not going to go into ketoacidosis. So anybody who tells you that doesn't really understand the nature of the ketogenic diet. The ketogenic diet is the ideal way to eat. Sometimes people will say, oh, it's too much fat for people who have fatty liver, or people who have fat problems, or people who have fat metabolism issues. Again, they're missing the percentage idea that you're only getting about 1,000 calories or 900 calories a day from fat. So it's not like you're getting a lot of fat. It's a high percentage of calories from fat. So I consider it the ideal way to eat with an exception, and that is not really a way of eating, although it is a way of eating, and that's fasting. So fasting is kind of a way of eating, or maybe it's a kind of way of non-eating, and that really is also a good way. You can't do it, obviously, you have to eat eventually, although you can go without food for 30 days, 40 days, but for most people, 1 or 2 days is hard enough. So it's not really a practical way to eat, but it is practical to fast once a day or once a month for a day, or once a month for 2 days a month, or 3 days a month, or once a week, as much as you can do. And if you can't fast a whole day, just go long periods during the day without eating, or stop eating at 4 p.m. and start eating at noon the next day. If you can go long stretches without food, that can start the biochemistry of fasting going. You won't have the long sustained biochemistry of fasting kicking in unless you do 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 days of fasting, but you can start it a little bit. So what is the biochemistry of fasting? Well, it's kind of like ketogenesis. Under conditions of fasting, your body starts to burn fat, and it will burn fat the same way it will burn fat in the ketogenic diet. It will release ketones. And people who fast understand, excuse me, that after you get past a certain period of fasting, your ketones kick in and you have so much energy and you feel so good, you don't even want to eat. You don't even want to start eating again. And I'm sure some of you experienced this. If you fasted for a whole day or for 2 days, it's almost like you're kind of scared to eat again, because you know you're going to go through that all of the negative feelings and the biochemical problems that are associated with foods. So fasting is an awesome thing to do if you can do it, especially if you're sick, unless you're malnourished. You don't want to be malnourished, but if you have some kind of autoimmune problem and you fast, typically you'll start to feel better. There's a really cool book called The Walls Protocol by Dr. Terry Walls. I've talked about this before. WAHL apostrophe S, The Walls Protocol. And she was an MD, and she cured herself of multiple sclerosis by fasting. Now, she had to eat eventually, but when she ate, she was very careful about what she ate. But she noticed that when she fasted, her symptoms would go away. And you'll notice that if yourself, or if you have a friend or family member, loved one who has an autoimmune disease, you'll notice, or you should tell them that they'll notice, when they stop eating, they'll feel better. And when they eat foods, their symptoms will flare up. And that's true about pretty much all inflammatory health issues. And by the way, after we all eat, we experience something called postprandial inflammation. And that is inflammation that spikes after we eat food. When you eat food, your immune system becomes activated, because basically the enemy is now getting inside the body. So the immune system becomes on high alert, and any inflammatory condition will spike when you eat even lettuce, or when you eat even an apple or a banana or whatever, and even something that's organic and it's vegetable and it's benign and it's mild. You'll still get a postprandial spike, let alone when you eat processed food, or when you eat meat, or when you eat something that's really complicated. So fasting is an ideal way to calm the body down, number one, to activate ketones, number two, and fasting is also a very important part of a process called autophagy or autophagy, AUTOPHAGY. When we fast, our body becomes autophagus. Auto means self, phage means eating. Autophagy is self-eating. What does that mean? It means your body cleans itself out. It has a process for getting rid of dead cells, getting rid of toxins, getting rid of waste products, cleaning itself out, almost like you can clean your dishwasher by putting soap in it and not having any dishes in it. Or you can clean your blender by putting a little bit of soap in it and not putting any food or any blending material in the blender. It self-cleans. That's what happens to the body when you don't put any food in it. It runs on a self-cleaning mode and it becomes autophagus. And this is great for people who are on medication, or people who are heavy metal poisoning, have some kind of toxicity going on, or it's just great for everybody. The more autophagy your body does, the less likely you are going to be sick, and the longer you live. This is one reason why calorie restriction is always associated with extended longevity. Calorie restriction, by the way, should always be associated with optimum nutrition. And that's called the Cron diet, calorie restriction, optimum nutrition. So in my humble opinion, the ketogenic diet is the perfect way to eat. Low calorie, low carbohydrates, and the carbohydrates that you want to ingest should always be vegetables with a little bit of fruits, and small amounts, 10 to 15% of your calories coming from an easy to process protein. It's always helpful when you're using protein, by the way, to use digestive enzymes with your protein. as well as apple cider vinegar or noni juice, which Youngevity has a great noni juice product, or aloe, or something acidic to help activate the enzymes that are associated with the digestion of meat or hard protein. The enzymes that are associated with protein digestion are called proteases. Youngevity's Ultimate Enzymes is a great source of natural proteases. Fats also, if you want to do the ketogenic diet, but you have a problem with fats, or even if you don't have a problem with fats, but you want to improve the way your body processes fats with the ketogenic diet, make sure you're using your Ultimate Enzymes, which contain an enzyme called lipase, bile, B-I-L-E, bile salts, which are found in the Ultimate Enzymes, as well as something called lecithin, which is found in the Ultimate Enzymes. You can buy lecithin granules too by themselves. And then also there's a really cool enzyme called pancreatin. And pancreatin also is important for the digestion of foods. And then don't forget about the apple cider vinegar. That's really important for helping acidify the contents of food as they leave the stomach and go into the intestine. And that's a whole nother story we can talk about and on another call. Let me see how much time we have. Okay, so we'll talk about sugar next time. Real quick, somebody asked about the package insert on a drug, and I always tell people that when they go to get a prescription drug, they should get the package insert. The pharmacist usually doesn't like to give the package insert, and the doctors don't like you to see the package insert. I got into trouble once for talking about the package insert with a patient. Doctor called me up and said, "Don't you ever tell my patient about the package insert," because they don't. The package insert is, and I can kind of see his point a little bit, because the package insert can be really scary, because the package insert has everything that could possibly go wrong. And if you read the package insert on a drug that you're taking, it can be really scary when you read about all the possible things that could go wrong. But that doesn't mean that they're always going to happen. So, I can kind of see the doctor's point. Nonetheless, we should all know what we're getting ourselves into if we're taking a prescription drug. That being said, there's one key health issue that's associated with taking drugs that doesn't show up on the package insert, and that is the same kind of issue that happens when you eat food. I said earlier how when we eat food, we have to mobilize our resources to digest the food. The essential fatty acids and the B vitamins and the amino acids. There's all kinds of nutrients that play a role in the detoxification and the assimilation and the digestion of foods, the absorption of foods. Likewise, when you're on a prescription drug, there are nutrients that are required to detoxify that drug. And those nutrients, things like coenzyme Q10 and vitamin C and magnesium and manganese and copper and selenium and zinc, a whole slew of these nutrients, deficiencies in these nutrients is not going to show up on the packaging. It's not going to show up in the side effects, the adverse reactions. So you may end up with a health challenge 2 or 3 years down the road that's associated with the nutritional deficiencies that were linked to the detoxification of your Mevacor or of your beta blocker, whatever it is you're taking, that don't show up in the package insert. So above and beyond what you see on the package insert, there's a whole issue of nutritional deficiencies, and everybody on prescription drugs, this is a great thing for Youngevity distributors to know, everybody on a prescription drug should be on the Beyond Tangy Tangerine minimum, but at least the Healthy Start Pack. But just to detoxify, just to replace the nutrients that are that the body is using up in the detoxification process, Beyond Tangy Tangerine is a must-have, not an option. Insurance companies should pay for Beyond Tangy Tangerine. All medical professionals who are writing scripts for drugs should have Beyond Tangy Tangerine in their office. And certainly anybody who's taking a prescription drug should know about Beyond Tangy Tangerine. Of course, it's not just Beyond Tangy Tangerine, but that's just an easy way to get started. All right, so the package insert, and I'm kind of dating myself when I call it the package insert because now everything's on the internet, so you don't need the package insert. I used to call it the package insert. And if you've ever seen the PDR, I haven't seen one of those for a while, the physician's desk reference. The physician's desk reference, or PDR, is just a book of package inserts. Yeah, it's that big, right? Yeah, and it gets bigger every year. So I just printed one off for Mevacor. Mevacor is a statin drug, and it's one of the more mild drugs. All drugs have their costs, but as far as drugs go, Mevacor is one of the more mild ones. The first thing is on the package insert, or I'll call it the package insert just for convenience, but I got this off the internet. The first thing is the description, which is a description of the drug. Nobody cares about that unless you're a chemist or you're a pharmacologist. Even pharmacists, there's not a lot of There's not a lot of super information from there, but it does tell you what's in the tablet. So for example, if you wanted to make a lovastatin or a Mevacor tablet, it would tell you that you need cellulose, lactose, magnesium stearate, and starch. Now, all of those are pretty much benign. They don't do anything. They just run right through your body. Then there's an antioxidant called BHA, butylated hydroxy anisole. I think that's what the A stands for. And that's not a great preservative, but it's there. It's an antioxidant, really. And then it also has FD and C blue 2, aluminum lake. Those are dyes. Those are pigments. And then it also has D and C yellow tan, aluminum lake, and a couple other dyes. So basically, it's a dye and it's starch and it's a few other things. The reason this is important is not so much for Mevacor, but for injectables. Drugs that are injected into your body will have some of these inactive ingredients in order to deliver the drug through the bloodstream, and they don't tell you what those are. So when you have a viral infection and some healthcare professional says, oh, don't worry about this injection because it's just been FDA approved, blah, 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 blah. They don't tell you about the other ingredients that are being injected into your bloodstream, aside from the so-called active ingredient or the ingredient that's doing the work. And that's why these excipients or these added ingredients to support the tablet, they become important in injectables. They're much more important in injectables than when taken orally. The second section is pharmacology, and that's kind of what the drug does to the body. It's actually quite interesting, but you do have to have a little biochemical background. So the average person doesn't really have to know about that. It includes the dosage, how much they take, and the clinical studies. That's not as important, and that is the bulk of the package insert. By the way, is the pharmacology. Then there's what's called the indications, and that's what it's used for, and the indications and usage, and that's what it's used for. And then we come to the stuff that we really want to start to pay attention to, and that's the contraindications. And contraindications are the conditions that you have. An indication is a condition. Indication is a medical term for a condition. So indications for taking a drug are the conditions that you would take the drug for. Contraindications are the conditions that you have that keep you from taking that drug. In other words, an indication is a condition, diabetes, for example, fatty liver disease, those are indications. A contraindication is fatty liver disease or diabetes that will interfere with the drug, or the drug will interfere with the disease. So contraindication is something that you should know about if you're suffering from a health challenge and you're considering taking a drug. Is this drug contraindicated with my fatty liver disease? Is it contraindicated with my arthritis? Is it contraindicated with my ALS or my fibromyalgia or whatever condition I have? And then is the most important part is the warnings. And some drugs have such severe warnings that they have a black box warning. Those are uber warnings. Those are extra warning. Danger, Will Robinson, danger. You guys remember that? That's a severe warning. But for most drugs, you're not going to have a black box warning. This statin drug has a warning for something called muscle disease. Cholesterol plays a very important role for muscles. The technical term is rhabdomyolysis, but it's basically muscle disease or myopathy. And then it also has drugs that will make the lovastatin more powerful or less powerful. They'll interfere with the lovastatin. And then they'll have what are called precautions. And in the precautions, you'll have things that you have to be aware of. In the case of the statin drugs, you got to have precautions for mental health problems, dementia, memory problems, muscle disease, immune problems. The most important precaution is against muscle disease. And that's pretty much it. So the most important thing on a package insert is going to be the last part of the package insert, which is where most of the information for the patient resides. And again, you can find the package insert on the internet, and anybody on a prescription drug, in my humble opinion, as a pharmacist, should be looking this up. And don't worry about the first few pages. Just start off at the last page where it starts, where it goes to, where it starts. What is it? What is that here?
The contraindications?
Contraindications, yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Now we'll talk about sugar because I kind of ran over here a little bit. So we'll talk.
Yeah, we'll talk about sugar another time. Now, do you have a few minutes? We have some hands up and a question that was emailed in. So let's put first the question that was emailed in. I'm trying to get off the typical medical prescription for herpes